Hi guys, welcome to the Pool and Around show on YouTube. Before we get started, please like and subscribe, share so that you get all the notifications from us. Today we're here with John Barton. Many of you know him as a case maker, but today we're interviewing here as the owner of Chester's Pool Room in Oklahoma. Chris?
Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for taking time out of your schedule. I know you're busy. So what made you want to buy a pool hall?
I ask myself that every day. Well, I actually, before I did JB Cases and while I had InStroke, I actually owned two pool rooms. Well, one was a pool room and one was like a pool bar kind of place. And that was when I was in Germany. So I had partners and then, things didn't go great. But it was a beautiful pool room. We renovated it, did real good with it. It's just that I'm not a good partners person. So after that was done, I said, you know what? I don't want to own a pool room anymore. I just want to enjoy playing. Then last year, we went to Puerto Rico for vacation. And one of my customers, he built a really pretty pool room there called Pool Players Factory. And it was just so nice, and I was so inspired by it. And I came home, and like 2 days after I'd been home, I noticed on Facebook that Chester's was up for sale. And just on a whim, I just said, you know what? I love the whole idea, the history of Chester's, the ambiance, and I can afford it right now, so I just bought it.
So speaking of history, you know some of the history of the place?
Well, somewhat. So when I was a teenager in Oklahoma, I started playing pool over on the south side, and then I moved to Edmond, and I was playing there at a place called Tigers. So this was like one of the meccas in Oklahoma City, so to speak, or one of the places where if you were a pool player, you had to get good enough, so to speak, to come in here, right? That's was my thinking at the time. So True Loves was one place, and I knew I couldn't get in there, even though I rode my bike there and kind of peeked in the door, because I had gotten beat at a game room, a place called Johnny's on the south side, by a person that somebody came up and they told me it was an Indian kid, right? I didn't know. I didn't really pay attention to whether people were Mexican or black or whatever, right? So I didn't know the difference between Indians and Mexicans. Right. But I got beat, and at that time I was playing for like $1 a game down there, so that's what we did all day long.
You were too serious.
And a guy came in and he beat me out of all the money, including the grocery money. So when I say all the money, I'm talking about like maybe $38, right? And afterwards, a guy come up to me and he goes, "Why'd you play that kid, an Indian kid?" And I said, "Well, I don't know why. I just played because he wanted to play, because I play everybody." And he said, "Well, that guy plays at True Loves, and you didn't have a chance." And I was like, "Well, I don't even know what True Loves is." So I rode my bike, and I figured out where it was, and I rode my bike over there, and I saw that it was 21 to enter, and back then. So I just kind of peeked in the door, and saw all the big tables and everything. And I'd never even seen, to that point in my life, I was about 12 or 13, I had never even seen a 9-foot table. And so in my mind at that moment, right, True Loves became like the place to end up, right? And then when I moved out to Edmond, right, I started hearing about the pool room here, is what it was called before it was called Chester's. And so finally I made my way up here, and I was able to come in. Nobody bothered me. I didn't try to drink anything, so nobody carded me. I didn't know if it had to be 21 or not back then, but I was able to get in. So I didn't play anybody. I just hung out and watched, and good players were here. I think Driller was here, and I just started to see pool being played at a higher level than I had ever seen before. So as it happened, though, I went into the Air Force. I moved to Florida. I went to the Air Force, and I left for 10 years. And then when I came back, this was one of the first places that I came to just to play and test myself out. And, of course, I ran into some kid named Chip, and that was a quick $400 lesson. But anyway, that's what I know of Chester. So I don't I am not really well versed in all the stories and everything that's gone here. The guy that you would need to really interview for that is Joe Rodriguez back there. He's a regular. He's been coming here, I think, since the place opened. And he's got all the stories, and also Eddie. You know, I don't know if you know Eddie here, who we call him Fast Eddie here. But he's here almost every day, and he can tell you all the stories about what has gone on in Chester's. Some of the things might not be safe for work, from what I understand. But this place has been here since '69.
Okay.
And it was purpose built, as far as I know, for a pool room. The original owners wanted to have a pool room across the street, and they were just the builder was dilly-dallying around, or something was going on, and so the owner of this plaza told the pool room owner, "I'll build this building for you here if you'll agree to come over here," and that's what they did, and it's been a pool room ever since.
Wow.
Yeah, come up here a few times when I was a kid.
So,
You want to talk about the place itself?
well, you want me to talk about the legends and stuff that have?
Yeah.
So legends, of course, you know, Joey Gray, of course, and Chip Compton are two of the most well-known players these days that have come out of Chester's. Once again, like Joe Rod and Eddie and them guys can tell you how they were backed and kind of mentored and taken around, how they got their how they made their bones, so to speak, you know, or paid their dues. But this was their home base, you know, where they played, as far as I know. And then we've had other great matches come through. We've had Tony Chohan come through and play Chip, and who else has been here?
Pongard, he come up here and played Chip.
Who?
Pongard, Jonathan.
Oh, Pinniger?
Pinniger.
Yeah.
No, he come up here and played
Yeah.
Chip.
I remember when I was like 9, I didn't even play pool yet. My dad brought me up, and we couldn't leave the pool room. And James Walden and Alex Paguline were playing on that 9-foot right there. And they played a big headset and went all through the night. And I slept underneath the bar table over here, just a little kid. And that's my first time at Chester's pool room. James Walden.
One of the first times that I came in here by myself, I used to come up here with my dad. First time I come up here, I'm playing on the bar 9-foot table. And Joey and Casey Frazier were in here. Well, Joey comes over to me and wants me to back him playing Casey. It's like, I'm no idiot. Y'all's not chopping me up.
Yeah.
So,
and that is one of the things about Chester's, you know, and in my research a little bit, I kind of went back and looked in trying to find out any information about Oklahoma City pool rooms. The idea that I have for this place is to kind of make it into a pool museum, specifically with a focus on Oklahoma pool and One Pocket and so on. So I tried to do some research, and one of the things I found out was a lot of the pool rooms back in the day were really bookie joints. They were for people to come in and place bets.
right.
And they used to have big boards on the wall with all the odds and everything. And I mean, just right out in the open. And apparently the Vice Squad, now this doesn't have anything to do with Chester's, it had to do with another pool room downtown. But there was a news story about the vice captain of the Vice Squad being asked why that he doesn't shut them down. And he's like, for what? He goes, I walk in, the most we can do is catch one person laying a bet, you know? And, but the real reason, according to the newspaper, was that at that pool room, all the judges and lawyers from the court, from the county courthouse downtown were all going to that pool room and placing their own bets. So apparently, you know, it was back in the day, at least in Oklahoma City, a lot of the pool rooms, at least in the, let's say the 60s through the 70s, you know, maybe even into the 80s, a lot of the pool rooms where a lot of people gathered who, let's just say, had illicit businesses maybe. And then they would mix with the squares, so to speak. And yeah, it was just a fun atmosphere. That's what a pool room is to me. It's a place where we can all get together no matter what walks of life, and we can hang out, and you don't have to be PC, so to speak, you know. And you can just really enjoy yourself, and you can always find competition at whatever level you're at.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you're probably the only pool room that's not smoking, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I know of. So are kids allowed to come in and play?
Yes, we're all ages. They can come in. It's the only thing we do is they can't go up to the bar. They can't go to the bar area. But yes, we have kids coming in. We have junior leagues on Sunday. The non-smoking thing, though, it wasn't non-smoking before, but when COVID hit, they made it non-smoking. And then when I bought it, that was probably the number one question. The number two question was, are you going to still let kids in? So the number one question was, are you going to keep it non-smoking? And I said yes. And even from the smokers, we've really gotten really good feedback on that. They're happy just not to go home and smell like an ashtray. So
what are you doing? I mean, as far, I mean, I'm let kids in. What are you doing to promote it? To promote pool.
So on that side of it, I haven't really done as much as I've wanted to do. One thing I did, or I do, and I did in a bigger way at the end of last year was I have it where people don't have to pay if they're practicing. So if they come in and they're doing drills or they're, not just playing pool, not just running balls, but if they're actually practicing and working on something, then they can practice for free. Now that's not currently in effect, but when I did it in December, it was really popular. And we had a lot of people doing that. And the other thing that I do here is I tell all the good players, you can earn table time if you'll spend some time helping people. So if you give people pointers, spend 30 minutes or an hour with them, then I'll give you twice as much time as you spent for you to play pool.
Right. So you don't have it, but you don't have a designated like house pro per se.
No, we don't really have a designated house pro. Sean, I guess, would be the closest to that. We've sort of talked about that.
I'm the best player that lives close by.
I'm right. Your dad plays pretty sporty.
It's getting better.
And Sean has free pool here, so he, for coming in and helping people and all the time. So I guess if you thought about a house pro sort of situation, then he'd be the closest person to that. But no, I don't have a formal house pro. Now, saying that, I lived in China for 7 years. And a lot of the pool rooms in China do have a house pro. And the way that they do it is I don't know if the house pro over there gets a salary per se, but the house pro will play anybody who asks. And the person who plays the pro pays double table time. And the pro pays nothing, but the person who's playing pays double. You can use that time for instruction. Some people like to gamble with the pro and test themselves and see where they're at. Some people just play with them, also to test themselves. But that's the way they do it. And then that person just kind of floats around and spends his time playing whoever wants to play or instructing.
Well, I know you touched on this a little bit, but like the museum. But what is your vision for Chester's?
My vision for Chester's, honestly, is to sell it. Now, the reason for that is that as wonderful as this room is, and it's a pool room, it's what I would call a real pool room. But it's not really conducive to holding like training camps and things like that because of the layout here. It's hard to separate. And I have found that when I try to do instruction here, people get interrupted. There's lots going on, the music, everything. So what I would like to do is I would like to set this up, Chester's, and make it really, like I said, a kind of a museum of pool. I don't really want it to be seen as a bar.
Right.
I want it to be seen as a serious pool room. And I do want people to be able to get instruction here, but I want it to be when they come in, there's a formal spot where they can see all the instructors listed. They can book their time. The instructors, anybody that wants to instruct here, they can. Sean knows that. He can come up here, or Mark Dimmick, and they can use the tables for free. And then the time would have to be paid for, but the instructor hopefully would be getting that from the people that they're contracting with. But honestly, for Chester's, what I would like to see it be for as long as I can remember, Chester's was kind of a hub. Even before it was called Chester's, it was kind of a must-stop type of place if you're traveling across the country. Chester's and True Loves, where you could always count on finding some action, or somebody would get on the phone and bring somebody down. And I would like that to continue. But I am not the right person for that. So if we talked about like the old days, right? So a lot of the people who owned it, you know, they had off the books businesses, so to speak, you know, or there was a lot of people in the place that had off the books businesses. So that meant there was a lot of backing here. There was a lot of money in the room for whatever type of game anybody wanted to get into. And so that's, I think, a reason why that people always made it a point to stop here when they were driving through. You know, being right on that crossroad of I-40 and I-35, it's kind of perfect for that. Also for Chester's players, you know, to get good at here, that ultimately I would really love it if that continued, but without the shadiness. You know what I mean? Where it was just straight up challenge matches. You get in, you play. Nobody's cutting anybody up like you alluded to earlier. And but if I were to keep Chester's, this would be my vision for it. I would like to build several teams here of players that I could send out to different tournaments everywhere, you know, whether they're local weekly tournaments, whether they're regionals or even nationals, or depending on how good they are, like maybe Chip and Joey, even internationals. And the pool room would support those players. So the activity in the pool room, the tournaments, the instruction, everything, we would be using our money pooled collectively to support those players and send them out through what I would say is membership dues. And if the player goes out and cashes in a tournament, they just put the money back into the pot up to their expenses, and then they keep everything else. But if they crash, they go 2 and out or whatever, 3 and out, they don't make the money, then we pay for it. You know, but that only happens as long as they maintain their spot on what I would call the first team. So let's say I had 5 players that formed this team at different levels, but as long as no one took their spot, then they would be eligible to go out and be funded or sponsored by Chester's. I think if more pool rooms did that, and if more tournaments said to the pool rooms, you send us players, right? And if your player wins, you'll get a percentage of the pot, right? Then maybe more pool rooms would be more incentivized to build up their players and sponsor them and more or less be competing against other pool rooms, right? And get that prestige of sending players out and watching trophies and checks come back in.
Sign me up. I'll be on that program.
Makes sense.
You heard it, guys. I want to talk. Oh, we were talking earlier about. Well, just tell about a little about pool leagues here. What can you get involved with and play league here if you want to play weekly?
So we have APA, we have TAP, or do we have TAP? I think we have TAP, and we have the USAPL pool league, and we have BCA. So all of those 4 people can play here.
Who do we talk to?
Well, if you're here, you would talk to Don, who's our league coordinator. But also we have all the phone numbers and everything over on the far wall back there, so anybody can find out. And we usually, when we get a new player in, if we strike up a conversation with them, we'll advise them of all that. But here's another little thing. When you ask about like what is Chester's doing to promote pool, Chester's by itself is not doing these things yet, but these are the vision that I have is that, for example, we had an Oklahoma pool guide. And all of the leagues, all of the pool rooms, you know, all the ways, all the competitions, they're listed in this pool guide, and that's handed out at every pool room. You walk in, you get one, right? Or if you don't have one, if you had one and you lost it, you walk in, you grab it, and you have one. That way you've got all the phone numbers, you've got everything that you need to be active in pool as much as you want to be. You know, so I think that would be super cool, and that's something we could all do together to promote pool. That's another little project that I have in the back of my mind, and I actually have somebody in mind who hopefully he's going to have time to compile that list. And I'm just going to, if I get around to it, I'm going to produce that booklet, at least the first one, and I'll put everybody in it for free. And then after that, I'll ask them, I'll say, if you want to stay in it, just chip in a little bit toward the production of it, which shouldn't be that expensive. But think about that. If every city had something like that going on, how cool that would be. Now, we all have the internet, right? We all say we can look stuff up and make it that easy. But I just remember the time when we used to keep notebooks, or the road players used to have their little black books, their spot books, so to speak, right?
Yep.
So when a road player came to town, right, if they were serious about it, not like me, if I went on the road, I'd be back before I got 2 miles down the road, busted and disgusted. But the real road players, they had spot books, right? You remember those? I'm sure somebody's talked to you about those.
Yeah, John.
And in those spot books, they knew, at least as if their information was up to date, they knew who to play, who was a go-off, who to stay away from, who to work their way up to, who had strong backers and who didn't, right? That's important, because you might have a strong player or a decent player that you'd like to get action with, but if that guy doesn't have any backers, then why mess with him?
Right.
You beat him, you can't win anything from anybody else.
Throwing good money after bad.
So basically, they would have a guide to Oklahoma City. And a lot of times they would have inside information too, because in every city they'd have steermen who would steer you to where the action was.
Right.
And then of course that brought in the double steer and the triple steer, and that goes back to cutting you up. And that's the unsavory part of pool that I would like to get away from, because this is such a great game. But if we all banded together, the pool rooms, and we just said, let's do some promotion. One of the things I said was malls, festivals, right? Imagine a pool table at a mall, and it has all the league information up there, all the, and think about it. We got 4 major leagues here. We have, what do we have? Like 5 pool rooms, 5 or 6 pool rooms or bars that would qualify as pool rooms, in my opinion. If everybody chipped in a little bit, we could afford to put a pool table at the mall like a kiosk and run it every month, staff it with volunteer players. Imagine if you had Mark Dimmick there doing like trick shots and introducing people to pool, right? Or it doesn't even have to be him, right? It could be me. I'm a slightly above average player, but I'm good enough to impress people who have never played before, and at least get them interested in pool and tell them all about how great the game is and everything. So that's the kind of thing that I would love to see, because here's the thing. Only some pool rooms really make a lot of money. Most of them are breaking even or struggling a little bit. They'll have good months. They'll have bad summer right now. They'll have slower months. And we all know that cycle, right? So any pool room by itself really doesn't have the budget, in my opinion, to go out and do all this promotion. But if we all chipped in a little bit together and just tried to bring more players in, then it would work.
I might even get a league or two to help fund it.
Yeah, of course. That's what I'm thinking, is we go to the leagues, we talk to them. Everybody will chip in a little bit. I mean, we're not asking everybody to put in like 5 or 10,000.
Right.
But just depending on what the costs are. For example, the Arts Festival downtown, they get 500,000 people every year, right? For 10 days. Over the course of 10 days, they get 500,000 people go through there. It cost about, I want to say about $2,000 or $3,000 to get a booth there. Not an art booth. The art booths are all commissioned, but they have the other booths like selling State Farm insurance or something like that. So that's what we would set up as. But now you imagine that's once a year over there, right? Okay, $3,000 among the 5 pool rooms. What are we talking about there? 600 a piece. 600 a piece for that kind of advertising. And so that would be my vision for Chester's as well as the other rooms, is that we try to bake a bigger pie, so to speak.